Competence. Do I need it on my boat when I'm fishing? Well, I've had a fishing hook through my finger. And I've run out of petrol. I forgot to put the bung in the back of the boat and it almost sank. And I've run the boat aground. So, yeah, I'd say competence is important when I'm on my boat out fishing. I try to concentrate on the notion of ensuring and guaranteeing that each fishing trip will be governed by competence. And I plan for the unexpected. That is my responsibility. And if I stuff up, I accept the blame. But what about the competence levels on our current ship of state? How does the government respond when you ask them a direct question about any mismanagement or dodgy dealings they have engaged in? Well, they, the Federal Liberal Party, don't answer the question. Give an answer unrelated to the question. Change the topic. Claim it's been dealt with. Move on. Say they only concentrate on what they are doing in the here and now, getting it done now. Blame somebody or something else. But hey, Minister, the outboard's fallen off the back of the boat. Why? They didn't buy enough of the right fuel for the boat's motor. They didn't supply enough fuel when it was desperately needed. The bung was left out of the back of the boat. And thus, through their tardiness in addressing urgent issues from the very beginning, as if we were not in a race, they have run the economy aground. So what do we witness? A grandiose display of managerial incompetence in relation to vaccine rollouts. No planning or action to stop or manage the virus raging through Victorian aged care facilities, which was a federal responsibility. The laughable pseudo-non-management of it crossing national borders and setting off spot fires across the continent. The Liberal Party could have said, "Right, we have banged on relentlessly about refugees crossing the nation's border and breaching our sovereignty. And we have spent God knows how many, perhaps billions, on endless contractors and detention facilities. Well, now we the Liberals are responsible for the virus crossing our border and bringing home our Australian citizens stranded overseas. Yes, it's a federal responsibility. So, we will build quality Commonwealth quarantine processing centres in each state to deal with the virus breaching our sovereign borders, and at the same time promptly bring back our lost Aussies. Oh, Aussie athletes first, of course. But no, instead they shirked that responsibility and fired their pure incompetence from the federal blame cannon at the states, especially the states they don't like. And it wasn't only the states who copped a fusillade from the blame cannon. They started with China, who can now be blamed for anything and everything these days. Then they turned to the states, especially the Labor ones, followed by the EU, stealing our vaccine shipments. Of course, Pfizer, the bastards were as slow as Australia Post according to the government. Yet, may I point out that in our rural region, Australia Post Services has not been slow for me. So Australia Post has only just been pipped by China in terms of the go-to blame receptacle. And finally, blame went towards, of course, the virus. So, it's the virus's fault that it's a virus. And the PM told us, just like Mad Boris, that we needed to learn to live alongside the virus. We'll humanise the virus and make out it's just the equivalent of the living beside a bogan pisshead problem. You know, you just have to live with them. So the virus is hanging around and kicking folk to death. But that's not happening to you, was the line the government took, repeating how unaffected by the virus you will be, thanks to the brilliance of the federal government. So you just have to learn to live beside it. As it's clear, the virus isn't doing much here. You saw Mad Bad Boris J's approach of, keep everything open, and so what if we lose a few? which is a corporate philosophy that fits in with the vibe of the federal Liberal/National Party, who constantly tell the common folk they are free individuals and they can take care of themselves. If they don't go with that corporate philosophical approach in regard to the economy in times of the plague, then the Business Council and the Turdock media will rain down a Turdock media shitestorm upon all who oppose the economy ahead of public health. This is a policy that ensures the corporate cabal can keep the pipeline of corporate wealth a-flowing, instead of shutting up shop in order to save a few measly voters' lives, and not clog up the hospitals till people are hanging out of the windows. You do realise that the glorious market has absolutely no solution to this crisis, other than natural selection of the weak and elderly. Well, in an economic sense, which is a process that is simply part of the natural market order. You know, survival of the fittest. And let the unfortunate wheeze themselves into oblivion. Of course, the Mad Boris approach did go pear-shaped in Britain when the bodies started to pile up, creating unseemly photo ops. And what happened here? Well, the Prime Minister's gold standard New South Wales plague management, with avoidance of any form of lockdown, came back to rip their behinds off. All because New South Wales was boots and all into the federal Libs' advocacy of the Mad Boris approach to dealing with the pesky bug, by keeping everything open in Sydney and telling everybody we all need to live beside the virus. It was obvious. No immediate hard lockdown in New South Wales. So it all had a bit of the Bolsonaros about it. And are home removalists and average tradies really essential services? Also, having tradies who travel, self-assessing whether they are essential services, and allowing people in the first week of the outbreak to be able to drive to wherever to shop, as individuals could define where their essential shopping should take place. And being a quiet, soft-spoken stand-up comedian, the New South Wales Premier followed the Prime Minister's and Federal Health Minister's comic shtick, and also personified the virus by saying it was cruel how contagious the virus is. So the virus has the human characteristic of cruelty. If it can act with cruelty, perhaps we need to anthropomorphise it a little more and give it a human name. How about we call it a Peter, or maybe even a Karen, or just a fast-spreading virus? But it's not all bad news. There have been some things the government has been reported as very efficient and competent at setting up and managing. Pork barrels. Yep, no incompetence at creating those. Sorry, what's the difference between a pork barrel and a slush fund? Anyway, these funds are great for allegedly bribing the common folk to look the other way at the government's incompetence, or just simply to get them to vote for the government. Imagine, hypothetically, if I were to go out and surreptitiously catch far more than the legal daily limit, and I secrete them away, so the authorities who would love to audit my catch don't know about them or what I'm going to do with them. Then, in a grandiose manner, I give them all out to my neighbours. Gee, won't my neighbours love me, especially if I do it day after day after day? Yep, that's destructive and pretty corrupt. And so is doling out spreadsheet-listed gifts, that is, hundreds of millions across the arbitrarily selected electorates of my colleagues, so they can do an overblown photo op in the region and loudly sing the praises of their generous LNP government. Yeah, we really care about you until you don't vote for us, or call us out on our incompetence or corruption. And let's face it, loads of folk have put it on the public record that pork barrelling is a corrupt activity. That is, if a government is spending in a recklessly unaccountable manner, willy-nilly, in purely their own interests, and shoving the receipts down behind the back seat of the car of state.